Cad Bane. The coolest character in Clone Wars, for my money, without a doubt. And now they've brought him to live action, it's one of those moments where I turned to Mrs. Might and Magic Studios, and we both knew I was going to build this costume. And I've done it, and here's a little video showing you how I did it.
So this build has a hard deadline of July 10th, because on that day I get to meet this guy who played Cad Bane in live action. So that means two things. One, I better get going, and two, this music is not urgent enough. Right then, let's kick off with the boots. The screen used ones are pretty expensive branded motorcycle boots. My budget for this costume just didn't run to those, so I found these on eBay. They're pretty cheap. What I did first of all is I painted them the correct colour black, and then I added some toe caps. I made these just out of milliput and sculpted them straight over the edge of the boot. It's a fairly quick, simple, easy job. It's all about time and budget for this build. Once that was done, I polished them up and added the side straps that you can see with the ring. Once all that was done, I added some weathering just over the top. I did this by airbrushing some black and some grey. And actually, one tip I found for this costume to recreate the desert sandy look was just kind of hit them from a distance with a standard can of filler primer, which you can get from most automotive shops. I'll show you how to make these fake leather ammo belt sections once we get to the belts and the holsters later on. But for the cartridges, if you hit up a seller on Etsy called The Modern Geek Shop, he can supply you the 3D digital files for those. These were very kindly printed for me by PPP Costuming, the lovely Charlie, who printed some other stuff as well and was super helpful. So moving upwards and onto the trousers, and this is probably where I had to compromise the most, I think, with the whole costume. The screen used ones, I believe, are a whipcord cotton, a kind of heavy duty western looking fabric. And I just couldn't find anything remotely close to this over in the UK that wasn't going to cost me an arm and a leg and needed to arrive in time. So I had to really compromise here, and I just kind of got as close as I could. You can see the weave, and it's kind of right, but they're not heavy duty enough really. And I just basically weathered these up in the same way I did the boots, with some spray and some sanding of the fabric. So they're close enough, but not the best bit of the costume. So let's move on. So the gun belts and holsters. First of all, the same method was used to do the ammo cartridges along the top of the boots. What you've basically got is some faux leather and a thinner strap of the same material. You then need to cut some slots. The main slots are going to be roughly the width of the cartridge, with a smaller gap in between the two, and then you're really kind of weaving that thin strap in and out, so over the top of the cartridge, then behind the leather, and then back out the front and over the top of the cartridge. I kind of hope you can see that here. I patterned these up just using some rough paper patterns and put some rivets in where they needed to be and weathered the whole things down again in much the same way that I did the boots. The blasters themselves, they were 3D printed by a very good friend of mine who you can find on Instagram as Saber and Shield. Brilliant costumer. The blaster files themselves, you can get the 3D print files for these from Etsy. The seller I used was Outer Rim Workshop, and a great seller, so check those guys out. Okay, so moving up to the coat and the vest. I didn't do anything with this apart from order it from Etsy. This is another great Etsy seller, Jester Props Costumes, so you can check those guys out there. I should also say there's a really good Facebook group, the Cad Bane Builders group, so if you're into this and you're trying to make this costume, do check that Facebook group out. It's full of really helpful members. I got a lot of advice and found a lot of the sellers that I mentioned here on that group. For the vambrace and for the greeblies for both the coat and the vest, these both came from Just Designs Norway, another Etsy seller. These were printed again by my very good friend over at Saber and Shield Cosplay. Again, you can find him on Instagram. These are pretty much basically 3D prints. I've just received and cleaned them up, painted them, the usual sanding. I did something slightly different for the chest piece blinking light. Here I made a mould of the 3D print and I actually cast that in a clear resin. What I then did is I glued a small LED, which is a pre-programmed blinking LED, just running off of a CR2032 battery. And then I painted the front of it, basically leaving the blinking square clear, and then hit that with a slight clear red coat so that you can see the LED blinking red as it does on screen. For the backpack, again, I ordered the digital files for these from Outer Rim Workshop, another fantastic piece of work by them. I just painted and weathered this up pretty much as you can see, and installed a second one of those pre-programmed LED blinking lights just for effect as seen on screen. and the hoses which run through the middle of this and then come round to the front to connect to the face mask are just CPAP hoses that I ordered again off of eBay, I believe. So the hands, these unfortunately go into the ran out of time pile. What I really wanted to do was do a nice finished sculpt and build a core and a silicone type mould out of fiberglass. Absolutely ran out of time to do that, and what I ended up having to do was a stone mould and a latex dwell cast for both hands, and then just paint up the fingers and use those under some brown leather gloves. That was as close as I could get really in the time I had, but maybe I'll come back to those in future. Alright, so we have worked our way up from his feet all the way up to his neck, and now for me, this is the fun bit, isn't it? The silicone mask and the hat. Let's have a look at how we did that. So the mask was made in pretty much the same way all my other masks have made that I've made before, and all the ones that I'm going to make in the future. You start with a solid core, a fiberglass core, and you sculpt your character Cad Bane over the top of that. Once you've done that, and that can take anything from weeks to months depending on how much time you've got, you then build a fiberglass mould around the outside of that, take that all apart, clean everything up, pop it back together and squirt the silicone in. Yep, I've oversimplified that quite a lot, but if I told you exactly step by step what it takes to make one of these, this would be a 3-hour video and you'd all be asleep by now. So that's a basic process. There's plenty of stuff online if you want to look into making silicone masks more. I'd recommend looking at Neil Gorton's materials and the Stan Winston School. And finally, to literally top the build off, the hat. This was a tricky one. I had to go on a hat making course for this one to learn how to make hats, because all of the available hats were just simply not big enough to go round the silicone mask when it was on a head. I then had to build my own hat block for the correct size and style of this hat, and all my hats now for these are handmade by me. I then cast out some cold cast aluminium side plates which were done designed for me by my very good friend Mr. Darren Thornick, who did an amazing job. These are then glued on with a leather hat band round, and the hat's then weathered, and that is it. That is the completed costume. Next, we took it off to Comic Con to meet the man himself. Alright, so here we am. I made it here. It looks like it's going to be pretty busy, so let's go and stick the gear on and go and meet the man. It's happening. So, in the end, was all that time and money worth it? Hell yeah, it was an absolutely brilliant day. It was great to meet Dorian King. He was such a nice guy, really generous with his time and very happy to talk about the character and the process he went through. I had a great time meeting him, it was just brilliant. And to top it off, the unexpected bonus was you guys. I mean, the public's reaction to Cad Bane was just amazing. Everybody knew who he was. I was non-stop photos all day, and I just had a brilliant day. So if you stopped by for a photo, I'd like to say thank you. You totally made my day. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I'll try and get back to you. And if you can like and subscribe too, that would be brilliant. Thanks very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care. I will catch you on the next one. Ta-da.
Do movement and teeth and all that sort of stuff.